It was a calm afternoon on May 7, 2017, in the small town of Betrayal, Ohio, when everything suddenly changed. David Kenny, along with his wife Sherry and their young daughter, went to visit his close friend Brad McGarry. They had a simple task in mind, returning a weed trimmer, but as they approached the house, something didn't feel right. No one answered the front door, and a growing sense of worry took hold of the family. David led them around to the back where they found the service door slightly open. Inside, the house was a mess with clear signs that something had gone terribly wrong. Sherry called out for Brad, but the only response was an eerie silence. When Brad didn't answer, David decided to check the basement. What he found there would change their lives forever. David Kenny was a young man who led an ordinary life. At his 21st birthday celebration, he met Sherry, a beautiful single mother attending with her son. David was instantly captivated, confiding to his mother the next day that he had found the love of his life. Despite some people questioning his decision to marry a woman with 3 young children, David was committed. To provide for his new family, he enrolled in a course to become a coal miner, a tough and risky job, but one that offered good pay. It was during this training that David met Brad McGarry. Born in the 1970s in Cambridge, Ohio, Brad had faced numerous challenges growing up openly gay in a conservative environment. Despite the prejudice, Brad had always stood firm in living his truth. Eventually, he switched careers from hairstyling to coal mining. David and Brad quickly became friends, with Brad even becoming a beloved figure in David's family, earning the affectionate nickname Uncle Brad from David's children. The two were inseparable, always sharing jokes and good times together. By 2017, David was 30 years old, happily married to Sherry, and their children were growing up. Brad, meanwhile, was balancing his work, family time, and a secret romance. On May 7, 2017, after attending a family gathering, Brad told a cousin that he needed to return home for a meeting later that day. Around 6:15 p.m., David, Sherry, and their youngest daughter stopped by Brad's house. They were surprised when Brad didn't answer the door even though his car was parked outside. Concerned, they went around to the back of the house and found the service door unlocked. After calling out to Brad without a response, David entered the house while Sherry searched upstairs. David's search led him to the basement where he was met with a horrifying sight: Brad's lifeless body lying in a pool of blood. Sherry, responding to her husband's scream, rushed downstairs and was equally shocked. She immediately called 911, reporting the discovery of Brad's body, the victim of a fatal gunshot wound. When police arrived, they found David and Sherry visibly shaken. The couple explained their close relationship with Brad, mentioning that they often spent holidays together and had planned a trip to the Bahamas with him in August. When asked about any enemies in Brad's life, David and Sherry mentioned that Brad had recently ended a tumultuous relationship with a man named Scotty, describing the relationship as fraught with conflict. In the basement, officers found Brad's body lying face down with a large pool of blood surrounding his head. Initially speculating that Brad might have taken his own life, the forensic expert asked if they had found a weapon. When they replied no, the team turned the body over, finding no weapon and quickly dispelling the suicide theory. As they surveyed the house, police noticed it seemed ransacked in a peculiar way. The kitchen was in disarray with several drawers open, and the living room was chaotic. However, after a thorough inspection, detectives realized no valuable items had been stolen, despite several worth taking. Brad's collection of rural-style art remained intact. The television was still in place and money was scattered on the floor. Considering these clues, police became convinced the robbery was staged. They also quickly dismissed the possibility of a hate crime after Brad's mine colleagues described him as respected and admired. The case seemed to be reaching a dead end until 2 days later when detectives interviewed Brad's cousin. She revealed that on the day of the incident, Brad had mentioned a man named DJ was supposed to visit his house, jokingly saying he planned to take a nap with his guest. She further disclosed that Brad had confided that the man he was seeing was married and hadn't come out to his wife about their homosexual relationship. This relationship with DJ had been ongoing for years. Despite initial reluctance, she finally revealed that DJ was actually David, the very man who had discovered Brad's body. When they discovered DJ was David, everything suddenly became clear. The detectives convinced David to hand over his phone, ostensibly to retrieve crime scene photos. In reality, they were tracking his location during the time Brad was killed. The phone's location data showed David had been at Brad's house at the time of the shooting. Though David had deleted incriminating messages, forensic analysis uncovered texts confirming their sexual relationship. Meanwhile, footage from a neighbor's surveillance camera showed David driving to Brad's house just before the estimated time of the attack. Notably in his wife's car, not his own. He left about 40 minutes later and returned hours later in his truck with his family under the pretense of delivering a weed trimmer. When confronted with this evidence, David admitted to being at the house but changed his story multiple times during interrogation. At one point, he claimed an unidentified third man had shot Brad after an argument and threatened him into silence. Eventually, David confessed to hiding his affair but insisted it had only been going on for months, not years. He claimed Brad had grown angry when David tried to end their relationship, brandishing a gun and threatening him. David alleged that during the struggle, he wrestled the gun away and shot Brad in self-defense, firing another shot while Brad was on the ground. The detectives quickly refuted this account, pointing out that forensic analysis revealed Brad had been shot twice in the back of the head, indicating the shooter stood behind him. When asked about the weapon, David claimed he had disposed of it while fleeing, but despite extensive searching, it was never recovered. Before taking David to jail, officers allowed him to speak with Sherry. David confessed to the affair and expressed regret, admitting he couldn't undo what he'd done. Sherry, shocked by the revelation, was left speechless, asking if he was mocking her with such an explanation. On May 9th, David was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Investigators hypothesized that Brad, frustrated with keeping their relationship secret, had likely threatened to reveal the truth to Sherry, giving David the motive to kill his friend and maintain his double life. During the preliminary hearing, police described how David had appeared distraught at the crime scene, experiencing trouble breathing and episodes of vomiting. The autopsy results were a critical turning point, showing Brad had been shot twice in the back of the head, inconsistent with self-defense. David's defense attorney argued that if a crime had been committed, it was manslaughter, not murder, and claimed David had acted in self-defense. The judge set bail at $1 million, which David's defense unsuccessfully attempted to reduce. During the trial, the prosecution presented the surveillance video, police body cam footage, and testimony from a forensic expert. Notably, DNA from a used condom showed Brad's DNA on the outside and an unknown male's on the inside, but no trace of David's DNA. The defense maintained that David had acted out of fear and in self-defense, while the prosecution countered that 2 bullets to the back of the head were not acts of self-defense, pointing out that Brad had been on his knees when shot. After deliberating for 4 hours, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. David Kenny was guilty of the aggravated murder of Brad McGarry. Before sentencing, David apologized to Brad's family, saying he never intended for any of this to happen and wished he could take it all back. However, the judge was unmoved, recounting David's numerous lies and calling the crime a cold and calculated execution, followed by an elaborate cover-up. In February 2018, David was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, with an additional 3 years for a firearm specification. The police remarked that the entire case was a tragedy that could have been avoided if David hadn't been so concerned with keeping his homosexuality secret. As of mid-2023, prison records indicated that David remained incarcerated in Ohio. Tragically, while David would never return to the coal mines, neither would Brad, as both their lives had been irreversibly altered by David's actions. Thanks for watching.